Well, to find out what's next for China's sharing economy, I'm joined by April Rinne. April is the founder and principal of April Worldwide. She's also a young global leader at the World Economic Forum. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So first of all, how would you describe the overall state and health of China's sharing economy?
It's a great question. Probably one of two ways. One is that it's sort of in adolescence, in which it's grown out of childhood, but it's not yet an adult. And as a result, the clothes don't fit, it's a little bit awkward, that sort of thing. At the same time, though, I would also say it is, the best word is a little tired. It's been running really, really fast towards very aggressive growth metrics, more aggressive than we see elsewhere in the world. And as a result, it's not always the case that entrepreneurs and investors have necessarily done all of the homework they need to do to create a long-term, thriving, sustainable business model. And we're starting to see some signs of strain that result from that.
And we've certainly seen some fall by the wayside after rushing into this sector, for example, sharing with umbrellas and things like that. But which of the sectors now are still booming, and how are they able to stay on top?
Sure. A couple things I'd like to state or tee up here. One is that the sharing economy, I like to say nirvana, the best case scenario for the sharing economy, is at the intersection of high cost and low frequency of use. So the more expensive or less often an asset is used, the greater the benefits of sharing. So naturally, we see things like cars and homes and office spaces thriving, but we also see quite a lot of success in things like retail, electronics, sporting goods. But then you get down to things like umbrellas. The price point is too low and the frequency of use is too low to actually make it worth the benefits or the investment of sharing. So what you find in those cases when umbrellas, for instance, are put up to be shared, you find people just not returning them because the penalty for not getting their deposit back isn't big enough to hit their pocketbook.
Right. So let's also talk about some of the giants. You know, you have these smaller comers, but in terms of the giants, your Didi, your Mobike, your Ofo, how are they doing, and what are some of the concerns that they have?
Well, this is probably a good point to zoom out just briefly and make something clear that may not be to all viewers, which is that the sharing economy in China is defined more broadly, more all-encompassing than it is in any other part of the world. And I've worked on every continent, and the all-encompassing sweep of the Chinese sharing economy means that we're kind of talking about a lot of different models under one big umbrella, not all of which are going to succeed in the same way. And that includes, we've got peer-to-peer or P2P business models where individuals are sharing assets directly with one another. We've got B2C, so business to consumer, as well as B2B. Now, when you're talking about some of the big players in China, what you're really looking at is B2C sharing, meaning that the business, the platform itself, still owns all of the assets. This isn't something, it's not the case of say, something like Airbnb, where the company owns none of the assets that are being shared. In the case of bike sharing, for instance, the companies own all of the assets. That means there is extremely expensive overhead and costs invested in the assets.
Now, let's also look at oversight. We saw that Chinese Premier Li Keqiang was saying that more prudent regulations will be needed and adopted to help grow the country's sharing economy. How are the current regulations keeping pace with the growth of the sharing economy?
This is a great point that I can't underscore enough, just how far behind public policy is from where the sharing economy is today. And this isn't just a Chinese problem or challenge, this is global. Most of the rules and regulations on the books around the world were designed for an era where ownership was the norm and when smartphones didn't exist. So we simply couldn't contemplate the kinds of business models that are possible today. Once we start looking at the way these business models are constructed, we really have to rethink the entire policy ecosystem in terms of responsibility, liability, insurance, safety, security, and so on.
And so looking ahead, how is investor appetite and consumer sentiment for the sharing economy looking going forward?
Again, I'm going to say it depends. So globally, investor appetite is still very strong, and consumer demand, customer demand is quite strong also. In China, again, for some of these reasons in which some of the challenges we're seeing fall within a part of the sharing economy in China that wouldn't be deemed part of the sharing economy in other countries. So it's interesting because investors in China, I think, are very much cool at this point. That doesn't mean that there might not be a rewarming or an revisiting of uptick in the sharing economy, but what it's going to require is entrepreneurs and investors building for long-term sustainable growth as opposed to short-term quick wins.
All right, great insights there. Thank you so much. April Rinne there, founder and principal of April Worldwide and a young global leader at the World Economic Forum.